This year marks the 20th anniversary of the Thomas S. Foley Institute at Washington State University. The Foley Institute was established to honor Speaker Foley's more than 30 years of public service to both state and nation, and as the 57th Speaker of the House of Representatives. Welcome to another episode of xConnect Northwest. I'm your host, Greg Mills, and today we are joined by Cornell Clayton, Director of the Thomas S. Foley Institute for Public Policy and Public Service at Washington State University, and Sam Smith, former President of Washington State University, to talk about the role of the Foley Institute. Great to have you both here with us today.
Thanks for having us.
All right. Before we get going, I want to remind you that you at home can join in the conversation simply by connecting with us on Twitter at NWPTV. You can use the hashtag xConnectNW. On Facebook, search Northwest Public Television, or by email at kwsutv@wsu.edu. So let's start by talking about each of your histories here at Washington State University. Maybe we'll start with you, Cornell.
Yeah, mine's shorter than his. Well, I came to WSU in 1992 as a professor in political science, and then I became the director of the Institute about 7 years ago. So I've been at the Institute for the last 7 years.
And we'll talk a little bit more about what the Foley Institute's all about, but what does your day look like?
Well, it depends. We run about 40 to 50 events every year, public education events where we have speakers or symposia or conferences. And on those days it's quite busy. As you can imagine, we're hosting people from out of state or out of the country. They come in and we have a full day of events for them. They speak, and then we're also preparing for upcoming events. And in addition to that, we also have a number of internship programs we're running. So we're meeting with students. We're trying to get them positions in Washington, D.C. or Olympia. And then finally, we have a research component as well. So we have some research networks which we run, and we have professorships and fellowships that we're always selecting those as well. So.
Yeah. As Cornell said, your history with Washington State University is well documented, but tell us a little bit about...
Well, actually, I'll start before I got here, because most of my association with Tom was personal.
Yeah.
Before I came here, I was the Dean of Agriculture at Penn State, and one of my projects was working in Sri Lanka, and I finished my work there, and I told the fellow who was the head of the USAID program that I was coming to WSU. He said, "Oh, my son-in-law does something out there. He's an elected official." Well, it was Heather's dad.
Okay.
So as we got ready to move in here, and literally we're unloading the truck, with this big guy in a suit and tie carrying box came in, said, "Hi, I'm Tom Foley." And then we worked back and forth together very, very, very closely, maybe once or twice a month. And my thing always with Tom was, when you step out, we want your papers. We want all the records, because you, as the Speaker of the House, has shown that anybody can actually become a world leader if they think rightly and if they're able to work rightly, and which is what he did.
So you maintained a relationship with Tom over many years then, I would expect.
Yeah, and as I was telling them a little bit earlier, he would talk, he would come by, we would visit, or I would visit him his office in D.C., go back and forth. And when the second location we had for WSU Spokane was in the same building that his office was in, and so we'd go back and forth with his staff on a regular basis. And then Tom would quite often call and come down from Spokane, because he wanted to take care particularly of the wheat growers in the area. And it'd be, "Sam, you know so-and-so, you think we could go have a cup of coffee with them?" Or a couple of the wheat growers that were associated with WSU, like Matt Crow, who was a former regent, were close to Tom. And we say, "All right, who do you want to talk to?" And he would always want to go talk to him and say, "Okay, what do you really need? How do we help you?"
That sounds like an example of the kind of legislator that he was, and leader that he was.
Just one quick one, then I'll get off it.
No, it's all good.
As I again mentioned earlier, when the morning after he lost the election here, and I'm still angry about that, but anyway, he called me about 6 o'clock in the morning. He said, Sam, in a little while I'm going to concede, but I can't do that till I have placed all of my staff in other positions. Would you help me with, and give me a couple of names? And I said, yes.
So you were able to help him in that instance as well, of course.
And he was just, that's the way he was.
Yeah.
And then several places wanted his papers. And so we fought very hard to get his papers here. Because before he finished the actual term, we wanted to get a written commitment to get him here, because we always said we want to start an institute. And an institute to do exactly what Cornell's doing. But I use the term on civility and politics. And I learned more from Tom than you can believe. And he, at one point I asked him about the divisions, between the R's and the D's and, this segmentation. I said, is this worse than it's ever been? He said, no. He said, go back, and he started rattling off the times when they used to have duels and shoot each other. And I said, well, then what is today? And it's worse today. He said, well, our system of government was set up with the concept that successful business people would take a term or two and come in and bring their expertise and leave. He said, now the majority of people in the legislature, and it's higher now, have never worked outside of government.
Right.
But those are the kinds of things you could learn from him. And then, so, as I say, we worked very hard to get this institute because we wanted his values expressed through the university, and which is exactly what Cornell's doing now.
Yeah.
And we have to continue to enlarge it.
Cornell, let's talk a little bit about the mission of the Foley Institute. Really, explain it.
Well, like I said, we have a three-part mission. One part is public education. So we try to run programs, we bring in speakers, we run symposia and conferences that tries to educate the public about important public policy issues, but also about the operation of democratic institutions. So that's one part of our mission. And then a second part of our mission is to really engage young people in public service and to help them think about public service as an honorable career, because that was something that Tom Foley felt very passionately about. So we do that primarily through our internship programs. We have internships in Washington, D.C., in Olympia in the state legislature, in agencies, state and local agencies across the state. And so if students want internship opportunities, they should come and talk to us and we can help them. And then the final part of our mission is to try to catalyze and encourage multidisciplinary, nonpartisan research on particularly vexing public policy questions, like involving the environment, for instance, or national security issues and things like that. One of the initiatives that we've really been focusing on, and it directly reflects the values of Tom Foley, is civility in public discourse. And we've done that. We received a $250,000 grant from the National Endowment of Humanities. We ran a major conference in Spokane about two or 3 years ago on that and published some materials about civility, the role of civility in democratic institutions. We are, in fact, President Smith is here today because we're initiating this year a new professorship. It's named after Sam Reed, who was a longtime Secretary of State in Washington, noted for his civility. And we have the Sam Reed Professorship in Civic Education and Civility. And we'll be making an appointment to that this year as well. That's housed in the Institute. And we just began an initiative down in Vancouver, Washington, that affects southwestern Washington, which is a public deliberation initiative where we actually train students to be facilitators for sort of town hall meetings around particularly vexing problems like affordable housing or access to education. And we hold these town hall meetings where we bring in experts to talk about the policy issues, and then we facilitate public discussion of the community about these issues.
Yeah, and you've had several guests, and Northwest Public Television has certainly been involved with some of those guests and symposia and whatnot. Who have some of those people been, just to sort of frame who it is that you've had speaking here?
Well, we have lots of public officials. So we have U.S. senators, members of Congress, the governor. We have, for instance, the Attorney General coming in October this year. We have the State Secretary of Health coming in later this semester, in the fall semester as well. So we have lots of public officials who come in regularly. But in addition to that, we bring in national figures. So we've had former Vermont Governor and DNC Chair Howard Dean come speak. We've had Nicholas Kristof, who's a Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist for the New York Times. We had Christopher Hitchens, who's a noted author. This last year we had Angela Davis come and talk at the Institute. So that, we have a really broad variety of speakers. And of course we have lots of academics come as well. People like Stephen Carter, who was a noted professor at Yale University, came out and was actually a keynote speaker at our civility conference a couple of years ago. So we have lots of different speakers.
Yeah. Sam, how do you see the students benefiting from having the Institute at Washington State?
First of all, I see that we're educating them to the fact that government, if you involve yourself, can improve and help those around them. And but basically what we're saying is you can't complain unless you're willing to do something about it. And so the idea being that you go out, you try it. You go on an internship. You go visit with some of these people. But do it long enough that you really learn. Let me come back to Sam Reed, if I could.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, when Sam left politics, we knew we wanted something at WSU since he's a graduate. And I, for one, pushed like mad to have it here at the Foley Institute because it was just so critical, because it's civility and civics. And again, many of the same things that Tom argued for. And a group of us met every Thursday morning at 9:30 for about a year, putting together the funding. But we're so tickled that it's in the Institute, and that here's another example, and he has another faculty member that can work with him and help him. And Tom and Sam are a lot alike.
It sounds that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did they have a relationship? I mean, they probably some, but
yeah, they had some, but they weren't close. They went back and forth quite a bit, but then both of them have always gone back and forth with everybody around them, and it was just genetics.
I know you certainly still keep in touch with Tom's family. What kind of a relationship do you maintain with his family, and did you get a chance to have much with him?
Yeah, I didn't meet him until later in his life, but I used to go out to Washington, D.C. and visit him, and he would love to tell stories. I'd go back and sit in his living room, and he would tell stories for hours. And oftentimes his wife Heather, she would get up and leave. And then she'd come back because she'd heard the stories before.
Sure.
But he passed away 2 years ago, and they held a memorial for him in the Capitol Rotunda. When President Obama came, President Clinton was there, and it was really an amazing event, a bipartisan event. I was saying earlier, probably the most eloquent tribute paid to Tom Foley at that event was by at that time, the minority leader, the Republican minority leader, Bob Michael. He was the last speaker at the memorial service, and he talked very eloquently, movingly. He was teared up about his great friend Tom Foley and how they remained friends their entire lives. Yeah. So that's the type of man Tom Foley was. Sure. But Heather Foley still is very involved. She came out for our distinguished lecture that we held in Spokane last year. She comes to the Institute a couple times of the year, and I go back and see her when we're in D.C.
I wish I had a lot more time to speak with you.
Well, have us back.
I would love to. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Well, it's an honor. Thank you.
Thanks to Cornell and Mr. Smith for joining us. Thanks to you at home for helping us out. We hope you enjoyed today's show. Remember, you can stay connected with us all week long by tweeting us, liking us on Facebook, or adding us to your circle on Google+. You can email us at kwsutv@wsu.edu and send us your show ideas. If you missed any part of today's show, don't worry about it. It'll be available online at nwptv.org. I'm Greg Mills. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time on air and online.